Uh, Thank you, Parthasarathy sir. I will not be putting on any presentation here afterwards. I would like to talk about only 4 smaller topics which I believe are playing a huge role in today's IP litigation and strategies for IP litigation. Today we had in the early morning the introduction speech by Mr. Praveen Anand, which really talked about jurisdiction part of it, and he emphasized on multiple or different jurisdictions coming up with different expertise or having different perceptions towards different issues. So one of the things which, as any IP lawyer would talk about, is make an appropriate choice of the jurisdictions. That's the primary issue that anybody will tell you, or any litigating lawyer will tell you on when you wish to really proceed with infringement action. Now, once you have decided that you will proceed with an infringement action, before going forward with it, most probably I would suggest to have a SWOT analysis to at least understand and be prepared for the threats which are going to come up. In all the infringement actions, we would see inevitably the patentee pushing for interim injunction. And when in the interim injunction stage, there are at least 2 or 3 aspects which the courts look into for a grant of an interim injunction. The first part would be whether the defendant is able to prove a non-infringement, that is, whether he is able to say that my product is non-infringing in nature, is not covered under the scope of the claim, which squarely brings into consideration the scope determination of an existing patent. The second one is a non-validity. Obviously, we also have other things such as the balance of convenience, which play a very critical role when it comes to pharma, but I'm not going to touch balance of convenience and pharma-related issues because it's a huge debatable and huge debate keeps on going between both the generic industry and the innovator industry. So let's not touching onto that balance of convenience part of it or the public convenience. Let's consider the aspect of non-infringement and non-validity at initial stages, because I would say 70 to 80% of the infringement cases, if an injunction is granted at the interim state, the parties come for a settlement out. So very rarely I would, especially other than the pharma-related issues, where the debate goes on quite heavily and quite extensively. There are certain cases where if the infringement suit is filed against some of the smaller players, for example, what Mr. Praveen Anand discussed today morning once again on sitagliptin, except for the bigger player, the smaller players tend to go for a settlement if an interim injunction is granted on the first dates. So let's look at the issues of non-infringement and how to go about it, and where the companies, especially located outside India, who have not a clear understanding of how the Indian law can get operated out, have tried to miss out the point. I'll use the board rather to just ask minor questions for the public, and anybody and everybody can answer to that. Let's say I'm drawing 2 circles. The first one is a first patent application which I filed with a very broad claim, and the second one is a second application filed by me, more of a selection patent covering a lesser restricted scope of thing. And now I come up with a product which is lying here. How many of you will say that on what basis the infringement should be initiated out? On the basis of this patent or on the basis of this patent? Second. How many? Both. Sir, as I said, let's leave the 3D out for a few minutes.
You know, patent takes the scope of this invention from the first patent?
Let's leave 3D for a few minutes.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
say another word.
Wonderful.
Second patent,
Yeah.
if for some reason gets invalidated,
Let's assume for a few minutes that both of them are valid.
then the first patent, scope of second patent gets eliminated from the first patent. Then it's a non-infringement of the first patent. I will argue like this.
I absolutely agree with you. That's a different issue. Yeah, please.
The litigation strategy, you cannot at the outset say both patents will be valid, I cannot presume.
Absolutely.
Once I do that, if you want to say, I'll assert both the patents.
Both of them.
I'll assert both patents.
That's the correct answer for it. Because I have seen most of them asserting either of them, which actually is one of the most detrimental choices which people make. I feel that best answer that we got, but that's not what we are looking at. Because if you had asserted one of them, and if you had asserted only the first one, then you are leaving the scope for this argument to come out that the first one never envisaged the product. On the other hand, what Mr. Sarthi said was absolutely correct. Why should I leave it open-ended? I will assert both of them. Either it falls under that or it falls under there. Let the court decide. So the scope determination, I would see in most of the pharma-related cases involving Section 3D, this is the problem which arises out, as you correctly pointed out. Now let's touch about some of the other things. Let's consider the same scenario and the compliance of Section 8. What is the need of compliance of Section 8 out here? Because if non-compliance is there, it can result in a prima facie decision being not granted in your favor. Because a non-validity is established on a prima facie part of it, the court may not be very inclined to grant you an interim injunction. That's all I'm looking at. So in case of this nature, what is the strategy adopted? Inevitably, you will find all multinational companies as saying that I will not disclose any information of this while prosecuting this application. I will not disclose any information for this while prosecuting this application, which very clearly lands up in a very huge problem, both in terms of when I'm wishing to follow Mr. Sarthi's strategy of trying to put both of them together. That's where the backup happens. So please go back and look into the prosecution strategies. If you are not corrected it, please correct it. Let's come to how to correct about it. You have one of the classical statements coming up from Delhi High Court in the Philips case. We can say that it's almost similar to this, where they have probably missed out non-submission of information in an attempt which was well before an infringement action came into picture. They filed the necessary information along with a petition and sought continuation of the, I would say, sought continuation for the oversight. And they said that it was just an oversight, was not a willful act of concealment. On the other hand, if you delay such an action of submitting the petitions, and if you are waiting for all the infringement actions to take place, and if you go on the last minute to the patent office and if you submit it, the courts may not be so inclined to take your actions as a oversight, appropriate oversight. So especially when I'm considering a scenario of this nature, many of the foreign companies, foreign associate, foreign coordinating law firms, because of the cost constraint issues, just simply because of cost, nothing more than that, they would say that I'm not going to do this interjungling and cross-border, information transfer. If you look at the Pfizer case, one of the classical cases which came out, same, almost similar to this, the court said that on one count, just because Pfizer didn't submit it, the details of this application while prosecuting this, they said that there is a clear-cut violation of Section 8. Fortunately, the case could have gone ahead and got revoked also, but fortunately, for some other reasons, for some inconsistent stands taken by the defendant, they didn't go about revoking the patent. Had it been a more consistent stand by the defendant, the overall patent could have been revoked. So please be aware of the inconsistent stance that we are taking out. The inconsistent stance need not come only at the Indian jurisdiction. The inconsistent stance can also arise because of inconsistencies abroad. For example, if you are trying to push for an infringement action on the basis of the narrower one in USA, and if you're trying to push for an infringement action in India on the basis of the enlarged scope or the bigger picture in India, there is a complete inconsistency stand which can come up. So when entering into a litigation in India, please ensure that your litigation strategies in India are either completely hand in hand with USA, or otherwise you at least set those things correct before you do some actions here. Because if not done, the losses will be quite high, and either it will be facing an issue of revocation of the patent in total. That's the worst case scenario, I would say, and that has happened a number of times in India. Please be aware of it. If not, you would also be looking at just losing out on the entire litigation suit and the competitor coming and eating away into your market. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.